Welcome back to Wealth Mavericks, the podcast where we help doctors unlock the secrets to building generational wealth. And today, we're talking about filing extensions and shifting your mindset around tax time.
That's what we use the summertime for, is preparation, planning. That's why we always say tax planning is year-round.
We want there to be less chance of mistake. And what's the rush?
Correct.
Okay, today we're going to talk about filing extensions at tax time. This is something that is very normal for us here at Terra Firma, but for many of our members who just joined us last year, this is the first time that they haven't had their taxes filed by April 15th. And like I said, this is normal in our world. Bob, for you, you've worked with business owners or high earners who are used to having to wait for their K-1s for later in the year. But for especially our W-2 docs, they're not used to this. And so we're really navigating this between the two types of members, those who are calm and this is normal, and those who are like, where are my taxes? Why aren't my taxes filed yet? So I thought we'd have a conversation today. Our whole thing is helping you build the business of you and shifting into the mindset of being a business owner. And this is part of that. So Bob, I would love to start by knowing, why do we file extensions for every member each year?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And of course, this isn't the search engine search of, hey, I want to learn about how to file taxes. So this is not one of those topics that just people are just jumping up and doing cartwheels for. But I think it's a very important topic because it's not spoken about. People don't talk about this, and they make assumptions, and tax season and everything needs to be filed by April 15th, blah, 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 blah. The reason why we file extensions is because it reduces mistakes, just plain and simple. And when we all know that when we make mistakes, there's usually a cost to it, not just on taxes, just mistakes in general in life. There's always a negative cost or consequence to those mistakes. And so something as meaningful and stressful and frustrating and maddening, whatever term you want to use about taxes and filing taxes, making a mistake on taxes is an issue. And this became more real to me when I started looking at more tax returns. I learned more about the tax code, and I was reviewing clients at the time tax returns, and I would review the tax return that was filed with my clients. I wasn't filing them. Their current CPAs and tax people would do it. And so I would review it, and they'd go, well, that doesn't seem right. And they'd go look in their information, and we'd look at it, and really 80% of the time, we always found some type of mistake. And to file an amendment to an already filed tax return is a big deal. You're allowed to do it. In fact, the federal government, the IRS, allows you the last 3 years to be able to file amendments. But it has to be done in paper. It has to be mailed in. It's a lot of work. And is there a good result or return back to you on that corrected return that yields you a benefit? And if there's not, because you're going to have to pay your CPA to do it, right? Because if it's their mistake, your mistake, he said, she said. And the reason why this is stressful is because every single taxpayer has to, air quotes, file by the deadline of April 15th or file an extension. Okay. And so that's a stress. You have 130 plus million taxpayers in the United States sending all their documentation to tax preparers or doing them themselves. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of documentation, and it's stressful. And there's tons of room for mistakes. And so that is really the big reason why we file extensions.
So even for those people who they're really on top of it, and by February they have everything, we still want to file an extension. It's not because we're waiting on anything. It's just because we want there to be less chance of mistake. And what's the rush?
Correct. Yeah, because no matter how amazing we think we are, no matter how amazing our CPA is, when we don't know how they deal with stress, We don't know what their total client load is. We don't know what's going on in their personal life. And you bundle all that into this short period of February to April 15th. That's a lot of pressure on that individual to not make a mistake. And so I view they're human. And what do humans do? We make mistakes. It's just natural. But if we can control that potential or that possibility of mistake, wouldn't we want to make a decision to control that? Sure. Absolutely. And that's what filing an extension does. Yeah. So if I can share why, besides the mistakes, is because when a CPA is done at April 15th, that next week, they're on vacation. Almost every single tax preparer goes away for a week to 2 weeks to just decompress and just, whoa, I can't believe I survived another season. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's a survival for them. Now, why would you want your taxes be done by somebody who's just trying to survive? Yeah. Right? It's a psychological thing. It's not a dollar and cents thing. Yes, there's a mistake, but for us, it's a psychological thing. So when they come back from vacation, they're rested. They spend some time going through their files, their paperwork, their team and everything. That's when we start getting engaged. So we really don't want to wait till the extension deadline, because then all of a sudden we did was delay the stress, delay the mistakes to September for business owners, October for individuals. We want to do it in summertime. If we have all the documentation, then let's do it May, June, July, when everybody's refreshed. Even you as a taxpayer tend to do vacations during the summer because kids are out of school. And so there's this kind of decompression. And it just brings peace, right? And so we want to simplify and make sure that what we do is accurate as best as we possibly can.
Sure. So then for the people who don't have everything together, why is that? Why do some of these K1s and different things take so long each year? I've been curious about that.
Same reason. Is you have accountants that are doing their tax filing, right? They're submitting tax returns for their clients, and a K1 is a partnership return. It's a IRS document that says you are a partner, you are a owner of this particular business that has its own return. So they're closing up last year's books. They're making sure that they're filing all their current clients. Then they got to go to the accounting. So by the time tax season's over, right? Think about it. You have January, February, March. March is the end of the first quarter. So a lot of these CPAs, if they're doing books for businesses, they're closing up year end. They're trying to close up first quarter. Then they're trying to do tax filings. That's a lot. And so you have now April, May, June. That's the end of the second quarter. And they're just starting to get caught up, right? And so there's this cycle of these businesses. And so what ends up happening is that because it's typically these K1s are because they're businesses, they're investments. So they also have to do valuations. So if they need to close up the books on those particular businesses, do valuations of those particular businesses, depending on what kind of holding that investment is for the types of shareholders or partners. And then they get close to the deadline date, they file, and then you as the individual investor partner get your K1, and now you got to submit.
Okay.
So it is a cycle. And then all of a sudden, if that tax preparer is in tax planning, then all of a sudden he files that extension. Now what's he doing? Year end. It's chaos. Yeah. And so what we try to do is say we acknowledge that chaos. We understand the business model of that. And chaos is not a good thing. Peace, understanding, control, leadership is what we try to drive this process. So thinking like a business owner, getting caught up in filing at the 15th actually reduces the peace. It creates more. Now, Here's where a lot of folks are like, oh my goodness, but I'm going to have to pay penalties. I'm going to have to pay fees on those penalties because I didn't file at the right time. When you look at the actual cost for just 2 or 3, maybe even 4 months of an extension, you're paying the penalties and the fees on the unpaid estimated taxes. So you, as a W-2, you have W-2 withheld. Most of the time as a physician, your CPA, your accountant is having you pay estimates. That's the safe harbor that the IRS has. They say, hey, your tax returns last year, your taxes last year was X. And this year, your estimates are going to be X plus Y. Right? Mm-hmm. And then that's what your estimates are based on. So really, most of the time, unless your income increased significantly from one year to the next, you're only paying penalties on the unpaid tax on a monthly basis. So many times, I think the highest fee I saw, just as a penalty, just as for clarity purposes, this is literally the highest. It was filed October 15th, so at the deadline date of extension, mm-hmm. and the penalty for late filing was $5,600. That's it. Mm-hmm. So somebody at $5,600 owed probably about $150,000 to $200,000 of additional taxes than what was estimated. That's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. That is not the majority of people. Right. That is not the majority of our members. That's not the majority of W-2s. Right? That's a unique particular situation. The average that I see is less than 1,000.
Okay.
So think about a mistake on a tax return, and we're comparing it to potentially $1,000 late filing fee. Mm-hmm. That's really nothing. It's really nothing. To be able to go into that period of peace, tranquility, mm-hmm. confidence, understanding, man, well worth it. Worth it. And that is the business of you and what we're trying to create.
That is good perspective. So I think for a lot of folks, and I know this from personal experience, I think most of us do. Previously, tax time has been this once a year scramble to get everything together, and then you submit it, and then you kind of hold your breath and you think, what is the verdict going to be? Like, are we going to get a refund, or are we going to owe big? And some of our members, newer members, have come to us and said, something happened and we owed way more than we thought we were going to. So it's this scary time. So I think for a lot of folks who are waiting for their taxes, they're feeling that way. They're feeling like, I just want to know how it turned out. Maybe from a fearful perspective, but I think for some from an excitement perspective too, like we were able to put in place these strategies and their taxes are going to be way lower than they've ever been. So they're like, I just want to know how it turns out. So what would you say to all those people who are having all these feelings about like, I just want to know how my taxes turned out?
Yeah. Take a deep breath and just focus on what you do as a physician. We are thrilled and excited of the anticipation and the excitement, mm-hmm. but that also creates lack of peace. If you think about it, right? So peace it falls on both sides. There mm-hmm. could be bad, unhappy peace, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're for negative reasons why you're not at peace. And then this is what you just explained. This is an excitement. This is a good feeling, but it also is not in the peace corridor, mm-hmm. right? And so I would say is just trust the process. Allow us to go through this process. We've given the majority of them estimates of what that would look like already. Mm-hmm. And we have been pretty close to those estimates. When we're not, it's because that particular member made more money than they thought or anticipated. Mm. And that's usually the issue. Mm-hmm. Or there was a different transaction. They sold an asset. They had some additional capital gains that they didn't expect the previous year and we didn't expect, or they forgot to tell us because they didn't know that it would cause whatever, because it's their first time they've ever done that. Mm-hmm. Right. And so there's unique situations that would be different than what the normal estimate would be. But that's why we do estimates, is mm-hmm. say, here's what it looks like. Now, one of the things we do for our members, and we're in the process of putting this together now, we always meet with our tax team every week. And what we're doing for those that we're waiting for K1s on is that we're getting a draft plan put together minus that K1. So they have an idea of, oh, okay, here's what it is now minus that K1, right? And we don't know if it's going to be a negative K1, it's a positive K1, but here's what it looks like until we get those, right? So there's a little bit of understanding. There's a step closer to realizing, but also for us, remember, peace and tranquility. For our tax team, they have a deadline date at September for businesses, October for personal. So if we're getting K1s right before September or right at the deadline date, we want to make sure our team doesn't have to all of a sudden prepare taxes. It's all done. All you need to do is just drop in the K1, hit recalculate, do whatever extra things you need to do, and it provides peace for our team as well. Okay. And so that's what we use the summertime for, is preparation, planning. That's why we always say tax planning is year round.
Absolutely. So then is it safe to say that the longer we work with someone, like year 2, year 3, we have a better idea and they have a better idea of like, we're planning year round. We've put these things in place. We saw what they did last time. This is what it's going to look like this year. Probably only better because now we've done this, this, and this in addition to that. So
correct.
There's more clarity the longer you go.
Absolutely. And that's with anything in life.
Right.
You have an understanding and education, you have an expectation based on what that is. And so that's why we have members that are a little anxious in that first year, whether it's a good anxious or a bad anxious, is because this is new. Right. But it is for us as well. We haven't had that particular individual as a member before. They're newer to us. So, right. But to your point, each year afterwards, and what we do when we just kind of a clarity as part of this process is that not only when we get the tax return do we do a walkthrough video, but we show them on a side-by-side spreadsheet of previous years to this year. So they have an understanding of what it looked like in the previous years of filing, or if they had a big change in income in this year. So we'll say, hey, this is what it would have looked like if you didn't work with us. Here's what it looks like because you did work with us, right? And just create that clarity and understanding of why am I doing this, meaning from their perspective, right? And so it's creating that peace. It's that understanding, that confidence of, okay, now I see the process. Now I understand the process, versus what happens a lot of times and why people don't like taxes or don't like tax season, because there's not a lot of clarity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of uncertainty. CPAs they go dormant, right? They hide in their cave and they're just doing a bunch of what we already talked about, right? Yeah. That's why we've built the membership. That's why we built our model the way we have. There's a particular psychological process of why we're doing it. A lot of times it's not a dollar and cents. It's purely a human psychology to help us stay in that corridor of peace.
Corridor of peace. I love it, Bob. And I will say that it has been so cool to watch that process. And it's like these beautiful bookends of when you meet with a member for the first time. I've already met with them a couple times when we do the cash flow recovery, when we do our onboarding call, but then they come to the tax plan call at the end of discovery and you show them their side by side and you say, hey, here's what you paid last year. But if we're able to come in and do some of our strategies, here's what it looks like that you will pay. And then they have that number knowing, okay, I want to move forward and implement this. Now on the other end of it, you show, here's what we were able to do. And had you not moved forward with us, here's what your tax bill would have been this year. And that seeing that number on both ends and really how close they've come, it's like blowing people away. It blows me away. Like it's really exciting. So I think that clarity piece is something that most people aren't used to having, like you said. And so I love that we can show them that. So I know we're just every day working to be better and better as a team and the way we serve our members, and just helping the newer people who aren't used to this process feel better about it, that there's nothing to panic about. There's nothing to worry about. It's coming, it's going to happen. And then, moving forward, they'll feel so much better. So I feel like this episode is hopefully helpful to a lot of those folks and the people who will work with us in the future. So thank you so much, Bob.
Of course.
Doc, thank you so much for listening. Hope this was helpful. Hit subscribe, share with your friends, and we can't wait to talk to you again. Until then, go be a wealth maverick.